do we only pray to God? Why not Muhammad, Ali?
Great question. So if you didn't hear, the question was, why do we only pray to God and not Nabi Muhammad and Ali?
Sam, thank you very much, Ali. That's a really fundamental question, to be honest, because ironically, some people fell into that trap. Yeah, some people fell into that trap. We worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because we believe that Allah, He is the one who created us. Yes? And He is the one who has control of everything in the world. Yeah? Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he seeks help from God. Yes? And he became Prophet Muhammad because he believed that God is the one that we worship, not anyone else. Yes? That's a very, very important point. And because sometimes we think that we are immune to these kind of thoughts. Unfortunately, we could fall into these traps when we start mixing God with His creation. Right? And this is something that we need to be careful of, actually. Yeah, we need to be careful not to do. Ahsant Ali, very, very beautiful question. Any other questions?
Okay. Can we have one more question as well?
Maybe it's just to follow up on that question. Thank you.
Thank you.
In terms of how we seek down or help from Ahlul Bayt to be closer to God, can you just comment on that?
Sure. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, although He taught us to seek help only from Him. He said, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ. He's teaching us how to pray. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ. إِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Only you do we use for support, right? But this does not mean that we do not use anything else. For example, if I want to talk to my wife now, I have to use the phone and talk. That's i'aun. You're using isti'ana with the phone. That's fine. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mind this. In the Quran, for example, Allah says, when He talks about Dhul Qarnayn, He said, فَأَعِنُونِي بِقُوَّةٍ أَجْعَلْ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَهُمْ رَدْمًا. Support me with power. Yes? وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ. Allah says, use a few things. Allah is telling us, use a few things. The key point is basically, when you go and seek support from something, what is your conviction? What do you believe? What do you think? Is this something that is independent of God? Because that's the problem. Again, mushrikun of Mecca, they fell into that trap. They thought, Allah created, retired, I worship that idol. That idol gives me sustenance, not Allah. Yeah? They fell into that trap. No, we follow people because we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them that authority or that position. And they are not min dunillah. You see in the Quran there's a lot of mention of the word min dunillah, instead of God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mind actually that you, in fact that's what I mentioned in the beginning, we are deficient. We have certain capacity that honestly we cannot on our own reach God. It means if we say that, it means that God is comprehensible. It means that God is limited. We can't understand Him with this, little tiny brain that we have. And that's a deficiency in God. Right? So that, I'm not sure if I hope I'm answering your question, not diverting Ellen.
The concept of shafa'a, basically. Shafa'a.
Yes, that's what God Himself said, right? So the idea is basically what God said. Yeah? What does that say? Doesn't have a sultan from God, something like that. If you could probably remind me, please. So if you invent something that God did not authorize, that's the problem. Allah says in the Quran, لا يشفعون إلا من ارتضى, I think. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could give a permission for people to do shafa'a. So these are mentioned in the Quran, these things. Tawassul and shafa'a, they are mentioned. But you need to remember, tawassul and shafa'a, these are not ends. These are means. Literally, tawassul means it's a means. If we treat it as ends, that's the problem. And that's what we think our Christian brothers and sisters, for example, they reach Jesus. And they stop there thinking that that is God. This is what we have an issue with. We think, no, Jesus is a means to take us up to God. It's like this black hole that would attract us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes? So that's the key point. What Allah authorized and what He did not authorize. Any other questions? I'll wait for the 7 awkward seconds.
Why Allah created us?
So Shujat is asking why Allah created us. I think it's prayer time now. It's easier to... I don't know. Do you want an answer for that? Because I don't have it.
Usually what I heard is like he wanted himself to be introduced. I don't know. It is a silly explanation, but I don't have an answer.
So the question is why did Allah create us? Okay. To be honest with you, I'll be very clear. I will not attempt to answer this now because we will not finish today. Right? I think you all understand why. Right? But I think sometimes this question needs to be. I need to understand where it is coming from. Right? Is it coming from someone who is a believer? Is it coming from someone who is not a believer, who's trying to prove God and say, or to disprove God and say, well, why did God create us? Therefore, there is no God. So I need to understand what that background is.
For the the context I was thinking was like he wanted us to pray for him, like submit to him.
Uh-huh.
The thing is like he created us just because for that satisfaction or gratification he received.
Yeah.
from-
So if you think so, there is a narration that says in Hadith Qudsi, كنت كنزا مخفيا فأحببت أن أعرف فخلقت الخلق لكي أعرف. I was a hidden treasure and then I wanted that I be known.
Yeah.
And then I created the creation so that I be known. Right? Now, if you want to apply the rule that I just mentioned in the lecture, which is make sure that whenever you read a narration or a story, you do not think of God as someone who has a human quality. If you think about this, I want it to be known as something to be selfish, some wanting to, feel of pride, for example, that we humans feel, then you're wrong there. Then try to seek another explanation. Allah says in the Quran, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created the man and the jinn except for the one reason that they what? يَعْبُدُونَ. يَعْبُدُونَ, as I just said, it's not worship, it is what? It is obey. Yes? Obey. Be subservient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in fact, in my personal conviction, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created me so that I can taste life, I can taste love, despite the pains that come with it. He wants me to taste that. And I think that's worth it. Right? Whether that answer quenches your thirst or not, or answers people's questions or not, I really don't know. But that's my personal conviction. Ibadah of God, obedience to God, and this is what Islam professes, it gives you happiness because it teaches you surrender. That feeling, that experience of God, and you can ask the people who have experience, who have gone experiences, Sufi experiences, Irfani experiences, whatever you want to call them. It doesn't have to be labeled like that. It could be anyone sitting on this table. You've experienced God in so many moments that no one knows about. That moment is worth your creation. That's my personal conviction. And to be honest, I'm pretty certain that we could find resources like this in the narrations of Ahlul Bayt and the world. So forgive me if I'm not elaborating. Any other questions? Walhamdulillahi Rabbil